What are the biggest position battles when it comes to Minnesota Vikings training camp? We're going to talk about it. And there are a lot of interesting ones, both on offense and defense. Not many for starting spots, but spots for real contributors. So we're going to talk about it. We are going to talk a little bit about cornerback. We almost have to. It is a very important position on this team, but not a whole lot has changed. Welcome to the Real Forno Show.
Welcome to the Real Forno Show, hosted by Tyler Forness, publisher at The Sporting News, contributor on SKOL North's Purple Daily, publisher of Substack Run In Shooter, the host of The Good, The Bad, and The Hungry on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, and a founding member of Vikings First and SKOL.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Real Forno Show. I'm your host, Tyler Forness. With me, as always, in the top right corner this week, he's producer Dave. Dave, we are now, let's see, I think it's 12 days away.
11 from rookies reporting.
Oh, today's the 10th. For some reason, I keep thinking today's the 9th. I don't know. My days are all kinds of wonky. But yes,
well, that's because
are.
You're doing nothing but writing. All you got to do is go over to the Sporting News and check out Tyler's writing. He's pumping out a ton of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And if you come to my house, which please don't come to my house, I mowed the front yard today. So I am doing other things. My wife made cookies and bars. Yeah, she tried this chocolate chip cookie recipe that my mom gave her, and they were kind of turning out a little gooey on the inside, like not gooey as in not that kind of gooey, like underdone gooey. So she tried messing with stuff, and let me tell you, they got maybe a little overcooked. But holy crap, Dave! You dunk those like you do an Oreo, and you hold them under milk for like 7 seconds. Phenomenal cookie, absolutely phenomenal cookie. So I have a lot of those to eat over the next few weeks. But we are not here to talk about cookies. I know you guys love when we talk about food. Gary, I know you're there. I'm excited to hear what you made for dinner tonight, but we are here to talk about some positional battles. And I did mention we're going to talk about corner. I know the passing of Kyrie Jackson has really impacted all of us, but even if you take Kyrie Jackson and not include him in the discussion, the cornerback room itself is fascinating. And we're going to get to that in time. And running back is where we're going to start, Dave, and we have to start here with talking about Cam Akers, because it was reported by SKOL North's Darren Doogie Wolfson just over a week ago that the Vikings were interested in bringing him back if he passed the physical. That's how he reported it. They were interested in bringing him back. Not they'd signed him. So on Monday, July 8th, not January. My goodness, my time really is messed up. July 8th. It was noticed on the ESPN transaction log, and this part is important. ESPN's transaction log, an unofficial piece. It's essentially there to keep you updated, but it's not the official transaction wire that the NFL releases every afternoon. Said that the Vikings have signed Cam Akers pending a physical. So it raised a lot of questions, and people were talking, the Vikings re-signed him. They re-signed him. Well, we didn't know 100% at the time, because it wasn't reported by any beat reporters. It wasn't reported by any of the national guys. And it certainly wasn't on the NFL transaction wire. All we had was this one piece. So the question was, is this real? Or did somebody just accidentally run with what Doogie reported and threw it up there? So, of course, being the good insider that Doogie is, he looked into it. No, it's legit. They're waiting on the physical, but they are going to sign him once that physical ends up passing. And I think that's interesting. Now, Akers coming off the second torn Achilles. He's now 8 months removed from surgery, being that he had surgery in November. Man, I don't know if he's going to be any good, but it is an interesting idea to bring him in. Plus, I think you need to bring in another running back for training camp. You can't just have 4 running backs and then CJ Ham. You got to give people a lot of carries at the end of these preseason games. And is Dwayne McBride going to get all of them? Well, if he's going to end up being your running back 3, which is a real possibility, that's not necessarily a great idea. You want like the practice squad guys, your running backs 4 and 5 to be getting those. And I think it's good to bring in more competition. I think it's interesting that the Vikings do not have any UDFAs at running back, which, I mean, this running back class was kind of bad in the sense that when you compare it to other classes, it wasn't very good. So you look at that, you look at all the other factors.
That's the definition of bad. It's not very good.
No, it was bad in comparison to others, not necessarily bad as in it's just straight up bad. There were some good players, but you look at next year's running back class, real good. All right. So running back 3 is, yeah, go ahead, Dave.
And it's interesting how different years have different vintages, just like wine, that is good. Next year, we're looking at defensive interior linemen it's going to be rock, that running backs are going to rock, right? This last draft, there was a bunch of quarterbacks, right? It's fun to see how each position, which has good years, which has bad years. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. So running back 3 is going to be pretty simple. You have running backs 1 and 2, Aaron Jones and Ty Chandler. Those are pretty much set in stone. So Myles Gaskin, the 7th round pick last year, Dwayne McBride, and Cam Akers will be fighting for that 3rd spot. And I think it's a pretty even race between Akers and Gaskin. Akers just needs to prove he's healthy. If he proves he's healthy, he's going to get the spot. But if he doesn't, that is where you're going to really start raising red flags and be like, okay, probably Gaskin. McBride just isn't all the way there yet as far as his development curve. And we can put him back on the practice squad and keep working with him because a lot of the work that he needs, he just did not get at UAB. He didn't get a lot of work in the passing game. He didn't get a lot of work in pass blocking. They used him as a 2-down runner. That was it. He was a bulldozer. And he has that part of the game down relatively well. It still needs to prove that it's going to translate to the NFL level, but he knows how to do that. He doesn't really know at a high level how to do the other elements of the game. So that in itself is going to be interesting. And I think that battle is going to be one to watch, Dave. I'm interested to see how it turns out. I'm interested to see if maybe Ty Chandler can overtake Aaron Jones at some point this year. I don't think it's happening early. I don't think it's happening in training camp. But it could happen because the Vikings love Chandler. He's young. And he may not be as young age-wise because I believe now he's 26 years old, but he's young as far as tread on the tires. He does not have a lot of carries to his name. I think in the NFL, he's under 200 carries. In college, he was only around, I think, like 400 or 500. Not a lot. And that kind of tread on the tires matters. And people were talking about Jonathan Taylor. Oh, he's 20 years old. You're getting him so young. Same with Braylon Allen this past year. Well, Dave, it doesn't matter if you're that young if you have a lot of tread on the tires. Both of those guys had over 900 collegiate carries. That's a significant amount of tread, and tread in itself matters. So I think when you have some of these conversations, the tread on the tires aspect is really important here. Chandler doesn't have a lot of it. We had similar conversations with Jaron Hall. Jaron Hall might be 25, but he had 2 years away from the game on that Mormon mission. So his body has taken 2 years less of football hits than another 25-year-old. And I think you can kind of equate that as well with Ty Chandler. Will he overtake him? I don't think so. But I'm intrigued to see if Chandler plays well enough, what they end up doing. Because we all know that Jones is more of a mercenary type player at this point. He just keeps getting injured. He only should be getting around 15, 16 touches a game to maintain his health. So how are they going to manufacture the rest of those touches? How are they going to utilize the running game? I think what they're going to do is they're going to utilize Ty Chandler a lot more. And that's going to be interesting to continue to watch.
You forgot Kene Nwangu. I know, special teams expert.
That's
but he's
right.
slot in and into the group and do running back things during the preseason as well.
I did forget about Kene Nwangwu. I don't see him making the team. I really don't. I don't think he's a good enough running back, and I'm not convinced that they're going to prioritize him on the kick return. So
that's going to be fun to watch in the preseason. Yes.
Oh, yes. There's going to be a lot of interesting things with the kick return. But let's move on. We have quite a few positions to get through here tonight. The next one, wide receiver 3. Who is going to step up and take that wide receiver 3 role? If you had to ask me right now, I think Brandon Powell ends up getting that. Brandon Powell, a little bit smaller. He's kind of a poor man's Percy Harvin as far as stylistically. He's not Percy. Percy was almost 6 foot, 215 pounds. Brandon Powell is 5'9", 184-ish. He's much smaller, but play style wise, Powell is of a similar ilk to Percy. And I think that element is interesting. I don't think they're going to give him handoffs out of the backfield like they did Percy, but at the end of the day, Percy was unique. Percy was the original Debo. And how are they going to kind of utilize him in that wide receiver 3 role? I really don't know. And the one thing that interests me, Dave, is because he's so small, that limits you a little bit as far as blocking. One of the benefits of having that 11 personnel, like especially when the Rams were at their peak, Cooper Kupp, great blocker. Robert Woods, great blocker. Well, if you have 2 great blockers of wide receiver and you put them in condensed sets, guess what? It's okay to have one less tight end or fullback on the field. And that makes you more multiple. And being more multiple means more versatile, and you can confuse the defense, which makes things easier on the offense. It all interconnects and it all intertwines. So taking a look at that, I worry that Powell isn't going to be the guy on a long-term basis, but maybe for a year. They want Jalen Nailor to be the guy, but Nailor can't stay healthy. He can't stay on the field. Like it's pretty rough for Nailor. He's got to figure that piece out.
Well, hopefully with Nailor, just like it happened with Kyle Rudolph. Kyle Rudolph started off with injury. And then he went like 8 seasons with nothing. That they aren't related, and then it comes in bunches, and he's done with his bunch, and then he stays healthy.
I forgot about the Kyle Rudolph injuries. I really did. But I think that's a really good comparison. If he can stay healthy, the staff loves Jalen Nailor. And if you can maximize that, I think that's a net benefit. But I don't know. I don't know how this is all going to manifest itself. We'll find out in time. And I think that's the really, really intriguing area here is we're going to find out a lot of this during camp. The sleepers here, there's 2 of them. Trishton Jackson and Thayer Thomas. Jackson's been with Kevin O'Connell since he came out of Syracuse as an undrafted free agent, started with the Rams, popped over to the Vikings. Alec Lewis has called him a quadruple A player, which for you non-baseball people, you're too good for the minors, but you're not good enough to be an everyday starter in the majors. You're in that weird middle ground. And if you are like one of the top reserves on a baseball team in the majors, you're not playing much. So I think that's an interesting one. And also when you kind of look at other things, like, is he going to be able to elevate enough? He's 26. How much more are you going to be able to extract from him at the age of 26? You can't expect everybody to be Adam Thielen. That's not how this works. However, he does have the knowledge of the playbook, and he has impressed when he's been given opportunities. I mean, we're not talking he should be a starter kind of impressed, but impressed nonetheless. Another guy who's impressed, Thayer Thomas. UDFA last year out of North Carolina State, more of a slot receiver. He's got a thick build despite being a little bit of a smaller receiver. I think he's over 200 pounds at about 6 feet tall. Kevin O'Connell's talked about him this offseason about how he's stepped up and played really well. So if the coaching staff is talking about a UDFA, that means something. That's where you can kind of read between the lines. Thayer Thomas has done a good job. Maybe he ends up getting the third wide receiver gig. It's not completely out of the question. So something to keep an eye on there. All right.
We may see a wide receiver 3 by committee is what I'm picturing. If one of these guys don't come out and stand out, that's what we're going to see.
I will say one guy I didn't mention is Trent Sherfield. They signed him mainly as a special teams guy. He was a wide receiver 3 for the Miami Dolphins in 2022. More of a slot kind of wide receiver 3, which is fine. And I think that that's going to be really interesting to see how that all plays out. We could see somebody rise from out of nowhere. I like Ty James, the wide receiver for Mercer. I don't think he's going to be wide receiver 3, but I think he's got an outside shot to make the roster with a really good camp. He was dominant at the FCS level, but it was also the FCS level. So it wouldn't surprise anyone if he just couldn't hack it, because FCS to the NFL is a significant leap. All right, let's talk about tight end. I think the Vikings are going to not place TJ Hockenson on the physically unable to perform list. I think they're going to keep him on the roster. And what they also have is their international pathway player, Sammy Reyes, a tight end. By having that tight end, Dave, they can afford to have Hockenson on the active roster. And by doing so, it allows him to be on the practice field. You can't practice if you're on the PUP. You can if you're on the active roster. So even though he's not going to play, and you can have him on the active roster to allow him to do any like work to the side, start to integrate in with practice, however you want to handle that. He can be there. He can be participating in whatever way you want. So that's going to be interesting to see how that happens. But what does the tight end room look like while he's out? Because it's likely he's going to be placed on IR after final cutdowns, which means he's going to miss the first 4 games. And missing the first 4 games isn't really that big of a deal. If he misses 4 games after tearing his ACL on Christmas Eve and has surgery at the end of January, Dave, I'm going to call that a win. I'm going to call that a very big win. And we'll see how that manifests. But what happens after tight end? The only thing I think is certain is tight end 2 is Josh Oliver. His role is not changing. Maybe he gets involved a little bit more in the pass game, but he's still going to be used as that bruising run blocker, and they're going to get him throws on the flat and let him kind of run in open space a little bit. They love doing that at the beginning of games. Just play action, boot, throw a flat route to the tight end, Josh Oliver, and let him run. They did against the Lions. I think they got 20 yards off of it. Like, that's an easy way to start the game. And guess what? Those kind of plays, Dave, easy for our friend Sam Darnold. So how is that going to manifest in itself? Will Robert Tonyan be the top tight end going into the season with TJ Hockenson still out? Will it be Nick Muse? Will it be Johnny Munt? I think Reyes isn't going to be doing a whole lot of anything right away, which is fine. He's an international pathway player. He did play a bunch of 2021 with the Commanders, but I'm not really convinced that he's going to be a factor. But I do think the battle between Nick Muse and Johnny Munt and Robert Tonyan for who are going to take those other 2 tight end spots, that's going to be a battle worth keeping an eye on. I genuinely don't know.
I want to see N'Keal Harry make the transition.
Yes, N'Keal Harry. I don't think he will.
We know he can catch the ball. And if he could learn the routes up from the tight end side with a little bit of blocking, I think he has a chance.
Mm-hmm. I don't think he will. I get the idea. I think the idea works. I just don't think he's going to make the roster because of the tight ends in front of him. Not necessarily his fault. That's just the way I kind of view it. I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be on the practice squad. They're going to continue to develop, and they're going to see if they can use him in certain game packages. Like, oh, we're playing X team. We want to use a lot of heavy personnel. N'Keal Harry, you're going to get the call up. You're going to play. That's how I see that working out, but we'll find out. All right. We've got a few more position groups to talk about here, Dave, and I'm really intrigued to kind of see how this works out. We've got 4 left. Guard. Who is going to start at guard? I think we need to watch out for Michael Juergens as somebody who can push these guys, not somebody who's going to start. The whole organization really likes him. Kwesi Ofamensa said in those draft videos that he believes that he can be a starter in the league for a long time. For me, 7th round pick. They believe in him. Will he deliver? Probably not. He's a 7th round pick. We just have to be realistic. And that's not an insult to Juergens. It's just a realistic outcome for a 7th round pick. And the one interesting thing as what is it? Big Raylan Dad. I think that's what that says. That is quite the username. Well done. Guard is interesting. We don't know if guard is actually bad. We don't know that. We don't know that it's good either. And I think that's where the intrigue lies. Blake Brandel, his biggest issue at tackle is that he's just not quick enough out of his stance to handle speed rushers. That's why he got moved inside at 6'7". Well, you don't have to worry about speed. Guess what? Theoretically, you can play, and you can play well. I want to see what that manifests itself looking like. I've used manifest a lot. It's like word of the day, manifest. I think my wife would be happy. She likes that word quite a bit. So Brandel on the inside, I really like. They've done a great job of developing him. He's played well in the limited amount of opportunities he's had to play. And he has to beat out Dalton Risner. Risner re-signing for less money than last year, and his money is not even 50% guaranteed. Being that it's not 50% guaranteed, they can cut him for just $1.1 million dead and $1.3 million on the cap saved. Well, of that $1.3 million, if you keep a UDFA rookie, it's going to take out about $800,000. So just save about $500,000. $500,000 ain't nothing, and that's objectively great. Now, if you can end up saving that $500,000 and using it for something else, I think that's a net positive for you. But I'll say this. I don't know if Risner is good enough to be a starter. And I say that because I didn't think his performance last year was very good. If you've watched this show before, you know that I wasn't the biggest fan of Risner. Dude could not run block, and he could not at all climb to the second level. You can't climb to the second level in this offense where you run a lot of zone concepts. Ooh, brutal. Not good. And I think that's a really big element to this whole conversation, Dave. A really big element. And then you have Ed Ingram, who I think is the best of the bunch, but he's a heavyweight fighter. He is a knockout artist. And if he doesn't knock you out, it can be a problem. And we've seen that happen from time to time. We've seen that happen consistently. I want to see him kind of shore some of that up. And he's going into year 3. So there's time for him to shore that up. Risner going into year 6. That stuff's probably not getting fixed. And I really want to see how this plays out. I think Brandel and Ingram are going to be your starting guards week 1. But this is a real competition. And the one interesting thing that people aren't talking enough about, Risner may have only played left guard in the NFL, but he also has experience at right guard and right tackle. So and I think he has experience at center. It's not like he's only played left guard his entire career. In college at Kansas State, he's played a little bit of everything. So that's something to keep in mind. They may want to just kick him out and try him out somewhere else. So something to be prepared for, Dave. How do you think this plays out?
I think Brandel and Ingram are your 2 starters. I don't think anybody beats them out. And as far as Risner, it's his run blocking. His pass blocking is okay. It's fine. He didn't allow a sack. He did allow some pressures, but not a sack. Now, every offensive lineman is going to allow some pressures and usually a sack. You don't win every single rep of every single game. it's impossible. You're playing too many. You're talking guys that are playing 1,700 plus snaps a season. It's just, it doesn't happen. But what I'd like to see is Juergens. And if you want to talk interior, and I do believe Risner played a quarter in a preseason game as center once, or at least they had him do it. So it's interesting. Juergens is one I want to watch, very, very much so. You also have Dan Freeney as a backup. We'll see Tyrese Robinson, Henry Bird, and Jeremy Flax hopefully is fighting for a practice team spot. We'll see on those guys. But it's going to be Brandel and Ingram if all goes as planned and everybody stays healthy and works. But we won't know. We can't judge off of anything that's happened so far during during the off season. During OTAs, all you're seeing guys are running around in shirts and T-shirts, and the big boys don't get to hit. When it comes to offense and defensive line, that doesn't get decided until they put the pads on and start thumping people. Once they do that, then we're going to get a better knowledge. Before that, you're just getting, are you going to the correct spot, right? Is your blocking assignment, if you are zone blocking to the right, are you hitting the correct zone? Ooh, tough when there's no pads on and you're not going full speed, right? And so it's going to be an interesting to see. I hope Brandel steps up. It's his first time given a starting spot with a whole offseason to prepare for it. I'm hoping, because he's going, if I remember correctly, in year 4. I hope this locks him into that next step, because he needs that next step as well. And if it does, Vikings look good. If it doesn't, we're a little worried. I'm not worried about Ed. Ed's going to take that next step, that magical third year, and he's going to become a good right guard. But as in good, as in better than average. He's average right now, but better than average. And we'll see from there. But it's going to be interesting. If not, it's going to be one of the positions we're talking about in next year's draft.
Yeah. I think that they're going to have this figured out and solved. Ingram's going to take a step. Brandel's going to prove that he's a capable starter. And quite frankly, you need capable. You have capable, you're in a good spot. Speaking of capable, defensive tackle. Do we have capable? I don't know. I really don't. But the one interesting element about the lack of quality defensive linemen, the Vikings were 8th in run defense last year. 98.7 yards a game allowed. They were 13th in total defense, 17th in scoring defense, with pretty much the same defensive line. Are we really going to sit here and be that concerned about the defensive line? I'm not 100% sure it matters that much. Now, the counter argument, which is 100% fair, is having a really good defensive line is always a good thing. And I agree wholeheartedly. But with how Brian Flores has called this defense, how he likes to have that 3-1-7 package, 3 edge rushers, 1 linebacker, 7 DBs, and he likes to be chaotic in how he utilizes them. I'm not sure the defensive line is going to matter that much. Now, is that because he doesn't have a good defensive line that he's making these kinds of play calls? That's a very fair point. It's a very fair idea. And it could be very true. I don't know if that's 100% the answer, but I think it's a really good hypothesis. Now, Harrison Phillips is your number 1. He is going to be the only guy to get a lot of snaps. Jerry Tillery is going to get a significant amount of snaps, and I think there's a place for him. I think he's fine. Jonathan Bullard, fine. They're not going to wow you. They're not really going to make a lot of great plays. They're just fine players. And I think that matters. Having objectively fine players is good. But who's going to step up? Are we going to see Jaquelin Roy end up taking a major step forward when he was projected at one point to be a first-round pick in the 2024 NFL draft. Vikings got him in round 5. So could it be a steal? Sure. Could it not be? Yeah, that's probably the case. It's probably he was a 5th-round pick for a reason. He did struggle in that final year. But at one point, he was projected to go round 1 based on his college play. And that's important. Not based on his star rating for 24/7, but because he was a good football player. So can you extract that? Can he take a step forward? What about Levi Drake Rodriguez? I think he's going to play nose tackle. I think that's why he's really bulking up, because his playing weight at like 290, that's a little small, but it's not that big of a deal. He is gaining weight, and I think they want him to play nose. That's my theory. And our lads, take it for what it's worth. Our lads has him listed as the backup nose tackle, not a defensive end in a 3-4, a nose tackle. So we'll find out how this defensive line is going to shape up. There's not a ton of high-end talent, but there's some interesting names that could play well for this team. And I'm really intrigued to see how it works. What's your read on it, Dave?
Well, first off, you forgot Darren's breakout player of the year 3 years running that never happened, James Lynch. Hopefully James Lynch will get his stuff together and he will contribute. I don't know. And then I also look for Taki Tayamami Mani to make at least the practice squad as a true nose tackle as well. But it's going to be interesting. And I want to see him. Like I said, the big guys, whether it be on the offensive side or the defensive side, we don't really get to evaluate until they put on the pads and start thumping. And I can't wait. But I agree with you. I expect Harrison Phillips to start, Bullard, and Tillery, most likely. I want Roy to step up. I think he can. And that would be great if he does.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of James Lynch. I just don't think he has the traits to really be able to take things to another level. That's just me. 2 more positions. We're going to talk about cornerback. And this is a difficult one. Here's the thing with cornerback. Even if you completely separate the Kyrie Jackson story from this position, it still has a lot of intrigue. There's one established guy, Byron Murphy Jr. He's going to be a starter. After that, it's all for grabs. Shaquille Griffin looks like he'll probably be a starter. Mekhi Blackman looks like he'll play during nickel situations. Caleb Evans was a starter all last year and played well until about the last 3 or 4 games. And you have to wonder how much an injury might have hindered him. But it's also a heavy mental position, and he could have just had a really rough stretch. But he's going to have to earn it. Andrew Booth Jr., it needs to earn a roster spot. Dwight McGlothern needs to earn a roster spot. There's some talent in this room. How are they going to handle this? How are they going to take another step forward? How are they going to figure all that out? That's the question we need to ask. That's the question we need answered. I'm very fascinated to see how they end up answering it themselves, because that's the key. They have to answer it. We can't answer it for them. And I'm really intrigued by this cornerback room. And obviously it's going to be marred by tragedy, but that matters, where you have talent, but they have to step up. Gene asked, will the Vikings get draft compensation for the tragedy? You would think that they might, but no. Now, in the world of baseball, what they end up doing is if you draft a guy in round 1 at pick 7, if he does not sign, you get a pick next year at pick 8, a bonus pick. So they do give you that. In the NFL, no, you get nothing. And it's absolutely stinks. But should they get anything? Like, it's a very delicate discussion. It just sucks. And I think we're going to leave it at that. But cornerback is going to be a position to watch. Even if Kyrie Jackson was still with us and he was going to be on the field, it would still be a position to watch, because all the same questions that we have they remain. They remain. It just kind of is what it is. Lastly, safety. You have your top 3 guys. What happens afterwards? Jay Ward, Theo Jackson, Lewis Cine. Who takes a step forward? Theo Jackson seems to be safety 4 on this team. Jay Ward is better on special teams than Lewis Cine, which is why Cine didn't play a lot last year. And then you have Najee Thompson, who moved to safety. So how does all this factor in? I don't think Najee Thompson matters. I think he's just going to make the team on special teams, and being listed as a safety, sure, fine. But I don't think it matters at all. I really want to see what the Vikings do with Cine. I want to see if they feature him. If he gets a lot of playing time in those first 2 preseason games, something's up. Something's up.
Jason asked, will Jackson's contract money move to the cap? And I believe that will be the case.
I honestly don't know how it works for somebody who's passed.
Well, he's obviously not going to get paid.
Mm-hmm.
So that money should revert back to the cap. Whether it's this year or next, that I don't know. But it should revert back.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a great question, Jason. And it's unfortunate. We'd rather see him play and pay him than what actually happened.
Okay, so based on a quick peek at over the cap, the Vikings are going to be on the hook for $206,787 this year. And next year, they're going to have a dead cap of about $620,000. There's no guaranteed salary.
Yeah, but like I said, they didn't pay him.
They paid the signing bonus.
Now,
yes. They can ask for it back, and technically they have a case, but that's an awful PR move to ask for that back. Now, teams have asked for signing bonuses back, but it's because of players retiring early. Megatron retired really early with the Detroit Lions. They asked for signing bonus back. Chris Borland retired after his rookie season with the 49ers. They asked for his signing bonus back. You could do it, but good Lord, that would be shitty. Mm-hmm. It would be awful to do that. But if they had, like what we talked about with J.J. McCarthy, that deferment of the signing bonus, one of the reasons why he might not have signed yet. Well, if there was some deferred till like September 15th, let's say $400,000 was due at signing, $400,000 was due in September, the Vikings don't have to pay that $400,000 because, yeah, he's not with us anymore. So then the cap number could change. We don't have all that information 100% concrete. We're going based off of what we find on Over the Cap, and Over the Cap doesn't have Kyrie Jackson moved to what's the phrase I'm looking for?
Inactive.
It's the cap space for players who are no longer with the team, but I don't want to use that word because it's a little insensitive. Big Railing Dad, his mother is probably using the money for the funeral. It would be horrible to ask for it back. Yeah, it would be an absolutely awful move PR wise. They could ask for it. Like, from a legal only standpoint, not looking at emotions, not looking at what the right thing is. They could. They're not going to. The Vikings organization is a class one. They're not going to ask for that money. They're not going to do it. But those are your biggest position battles. Kicker is going to be an interesting one, but I think Will Reicher's going to get it. No offense to John Parker Romo, but I think he's going to get it. I think Ryan Wright, as the incumbent, is going to win the punter job. Punting is so interesting. It's more about your process rather than your results. Now, the results should still be good, but if you're using good process and your results aren't as good, then there's a lot of different factors. Like if you're punting a lot from the 20-yard line versus if you're punting a lot from the 40, your numbers are going to be significantly different because your punting situations are different. So I might have to take a look at where all of his punts came from, because that's going to tell you a lot more about why the data was what it was. And contextualizing the data is so important. It's just like, oh, he was the second worst in punts inside the 20. Well, if most of his punts came from inside the 30 on the other side, I think that's okay. Because even if it gets inside the 20, if the ball's returned out, it doesn't count. Like, it's where the ball gets downed. Then net yards, those are the big ones. Okay. So I think Ryan Wright's going to get it. Seth Vernon, he's just a guy. So there you have it. Biggest position battles. Next week, we're going to have a lot more conversation about like previewing Vikings training camp. And then July 22nd, the rookies will have already reported. The veterans are going to report the next day. And we have a practice to talk about next 2 weeks from Saturday, the 27th. I'm really excited. I'm really excited for this. Don't forget, 2 old bloggers this upcoming Sunday afternoon. And this is where you need the notifications on. Dave and Darren have gone at different times. They've gone at 1 Central. They've gone at their normal time of 4 Central. They've gone at 5 Central. If you have the notifications on, you will know when they go live, and it'll be easy for you to jump. So make sure you subscribe. Hit that ring the bell button in the top corner of your YouTube page, and you'll know whenever we go live. Because guess what? If breaking news happens, we're going to go live. And we're going to make sure that we talk about it. Now, we didn't for the Kyrie Jackson stuff because sometimes you just don't want to monetize something like that. So we chose not to do that because some things are just more important. And we're going to have a lot more stuff. Dave is going to have Who Will Be King. Are you hosting that this week, Dave?
No, I am not. And we are going to record tomorrow because couldn't do it today. And it will be under the Bear Claw podcast, which is, I think their YouTube channel is Disgruntled Bears fans or Disgruntled Chicago fans. It's in the links. If you go look back at the old stuff, you can find it. And we're going to watch lots to talk about when it comes to the division. What's the story with, the savior in Chicago? Is he going to sign or not? There's rumblings that even though rookies are, given a draft slot and they're going to get paid X number of dollars, that he's bucking that and may not sign because he wants more. He wants more say. He wants to be able to say who his receivers are and all sorts of other things. We'll find out. Should be interesting, as always.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be interesting. We're going to have a lot more for you. And that's also one of the reasons why you want to have the podcast feed subscribed to. Give us a 5-star review. You know what, Dave? I'm going to pull it up. We ask people for 5-star reviews and to write a review on Vikings First and SKOL. Let's see if we have any new ones. Last I checked, there were some new 5-star reviews, but not any written ones. Nope, I don't see any new ones, but we do have 2 saying that we are great, and I greatly appreciate that. We're up to 13 reviews, 4.7 out of 5 stars. At least one person said that we were a 1-star. That's unfortunate. But
hey,
you know what?
One of your fans from the Purple Daily Show.
It's probably one of that. It's probably that guy that calls me a Make-A-Wish kid.
Yeah.
Look, yeah. Hey, you help the algorithm, buddy. You help the algorithm. And you know what? There's a chance that I'm going to do some more podcast only stuff this upcoming season, especially if there's something that like, hey, I just kind of want to talk for 15 minutes. And guess what? Then we'll throw it up there. We'll give you extra content. And you know what? You don't even have to listen to it. It's say, hey, I got time. I'm going to be on my lawnmower. I got noise canceling headphones. Let's throw on a podcast. That's what it's there for. We're there to entertain you. We're grateful for you every single day. I'm Tyler. He's Dave. SKOL Vikings, everybody.
SKOL Vikings. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love, our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Forness and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching the Real Forno Show. SKOL, everyone!